It's gotten to the place that whenever I turn on social media, I'm always seeing videos and articles of the so-called black Americans taking an L to race soldiers, to the so-called police department. You have these young 20-something-year-old young white boys that's targeting black men and even black women. And you hear black women screaming in the background, telling the black man, no, listen to what he says, don't resist. And the police is yelling, stop resisting, stop resisting, stop resisting. This is the same tactic that was used back in the 50s and 60s as an excuse to murder unarmed black Americans. And black people are just taking it. They're not fighting back. Black Americans are always talking about how they build this nation. They're always talking about how they were warriors back in time. When today, you're fighting for nothing. The only time the so-called black Americans stand up to fight is when they're being controlled and manipulated by the Democrat Party. You're willing to put your life on the line for a political party, but yet sit back and watch your own brothers and sisters being murdered right in front of you, and the only thing you can do is pull out a camera and video record. That's the only thing you can do, is record your brother or your sister being murdered right in front of your eyes. And when asked the question, why didn't you do anything? You respond and say, what can we do? They have guns. Well, so do you. Because you take the lives of your own brothers every single day. There are so many memorials that I see on the side of the road in the hood. You don't mind taking the life of your own brother and sister because someone said something to you that you didn't like, or because someone stepped on your sneakers, or because you're in a club and someone by mistake waste a drink on you. So now you're ready and willing to take the life of your own brother, but yet you will sit there and watch these race soldiers just choke the life out of someone that looks just like you, and you say not a word. What we need today is a civil rights movement part 2. I'll repeat that. What we need today is a civil rights movement part 2. We're in a time where we're a lot stronger, more equipped to stand up instead of begging, instead of protesting. Maybe it's past time for you to take what is rightfully yours. I'll repeat that. Maybe it's past time for you to take what is rightfully yours, because you're begging for reparations. The same political party that you voted for that you risk your lives for, that you burn down your own communities for, are completely ignoring you. I had just got done posting a video on TikTok where the illegal immigrants in New York City, where they spent billions of dollars to house and feed these people that cross over the border, and they're throwing the food away, saying that they don't like it. Destroying the hotel that your tax dollars are paying for. They're treating the staff like the staff has no authority over them, which they don't, because your president that you voted for has given illegal immigrants more power than you have. You have no rights in your own country that you were born in, that your tax dollars are paying for, and you have no say in what happens to it. He can just dish out all of this money to foreign nations. I bought a piece of fish, just one piece of fish, on Friday. And usually I don't look at the price. I just go and ask for the fish and go pay for it. I don't look at the price tag because it's usually about maybe $8 that I pay for the fried fish. So I went and bought a piece of fish. Didn't think too much about it. Got to the register. I bought one piece of fish, some bananas, and some ice, a bag of ice. When I got to the register, my order came to $35. And I didn't think about it. I paid for it. And then when I got in the car, I'm like, wait a minute. $35 for what? So I had to look on my receipt because the ice was like about $2. The bananas was about $2 and something. So that one piece of fish cost me $30. Inflation. Then I had to go fill my car up, and people are talking about eggs on the internet where they're paying now more than $7 for a carton of eggs. On top of that, you're paying taxes to the IRS. But yet, although so many Americans are struggling and suffering and homeless, these illegal immigrants that's crossing the border have nothing to worry about. They just walk over the border and they're given free health care. They're given free lodging, free food, and they're protected. The illegal immigrants are a protected class, and you have no rights. You're struggling. And you're asking for reparations that's due to you, and Biden completely ignores you. Gave Africa, what was it, so many millions of dollars or billions of dollars in reparations? Came around and said, these are reparations for you. And completely and totally ignored the so-called black Americans. There are white people that are waiting for black Americans to set it off because in their minds, black Americans have been treated so bad throughout history, over 400 years. They're wondering, when are black Americans going to stand up and fight? The fight only comes when they're fighting in behalf of the Democrat Party. It's like black Americans are controlled. You're robots. You're being destroyed with your own tax dollar, money that's coming out of your paycheck. You filed every year just to get a few dollars back of what they took from you. but yet you have no rights. They tell you that you don't deserve it, that you should not get it. And then you have migrants that come to this nation and they're speaking out saying how you don't deserve what is rightfully yours. But yet they come to this nation and they benefit off of what your ancestors had fought for. And you're treated as third-class citizens that have no voice at all unless you're speaking in behalf of the Democrat Party. There needs to be a civil rights movement part 2. When are Black Americans going to stand up? When are you going to come together as one nation? If you look back at the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, and just look at what your parents went through, your great-grandparents, or better yet, your grandparents, look at what they went through to get to where you are today. And now you're falling asleep. You have fallen asleep. You're under a spell. You need to break that spell. Black Americans could put it into a lot of what's going on in your communities. But for some reason, you're afraid to stand up and fight. You're afraid to stand up and take what is yours. Stop begging, stand up and take what is rightfully yours. Demand what is rightfully yours. It's easy for a lot of you Democrats, Black Americans, to talk about what they accused Donald Trump of doing on January. But just think if Black Americans stood up and did that. Think of if Black Americans stand up and do the same thing that the Democrats accuse Trump and the mega group, as you guys call them. Imagine what could happen. Are you willing to risk your life for freedom? And the freedom for your children and your children's children. Black Americans got the power to change the way this country, or the better yet, the direction that this country is going in. You already have the support. There's other races, other nations that's willing to stand behind you to take what is yours. You talk about how you fought, you were kings and you were priests and you had all this power and how you conquered other nations. You were warriors. You talk about how those on the alleged slave ships fought back, that threw themselves overboard to keep from being taken captive. And now we're in 2023 and you willfully surrender and submit to white supremacy. You have become the face of white supremacy. You'll talk about it. You'll complain about the white man. But you're the face of white supremacy. You're the lab rat. They've turned your sons into homosexuals. They turned your daughters into lesbians. And you've accepted it. You're content with it. They stripped you of everything, even the right to be a human. And now you calling yourself the same racist names or bywords that the white supremacists called your ancestors. You're now calling each other that. And you're willing to take the life of your brother and your sister. But yet you refuse to stand up and take what is yours. You want to remain on the bottom when you have the power. It's been proven. You've proven the power that you have with Black Lives Matter. You've proven that power. Look at the results that you got for the Democrats. So why not stand up and fight for yourself, for your communities? Stop killing each other. Stop hating on each other. Support each other. Come together as a nation. Act like you're a nation. We need a civil rights movement part 2. Who's going to set it off? Instead of waiting for a leader, why not be that leader? Think about what Tariq Nasheed did, just one individual person at the last minute when he had his reparation gathering in D.C. Just think if all Black Americans were to come together, what you could accomplish. So I'm really tired of watching Black Americans take an L. When you see unjust from those race soldiers called police officers, when they start working outside of their job, because a lot of them are scary. The reason why they take those jobs is to be able to do what they do because they're protected by that badge and that gun. But if you're sitting there watching one race soldier murder someone that looks like you, don't you know that if the community were to come together, instead of shouting at him, go after him, take him down, give him the same justice that he gave that brother. In the case of George Floyd, there were a lot of people standing around watching that. That's when the people should have stood up. That's when the people should have stood up in defense of George Floyd. Even if it meant stopping them from doing what they do. Even if it meant taking the same energy that they had when that cop had his knee on George Floyd's neck. That's when the strong men of the community, because they were outnumbered. They were outnumbered. How can you allow one or two police officers to come in your neighborhood and murder your neighbor, murder your loved one, and they're able to leave and go home to their families? They still have their families. The only thing the police department is going to do, the worst case scenario, is that they get fired and lose their job. And then they'll go reapply at another police station and get hired to continue their white supremacy. See, I made a video a long time ago where they took off their sheets and they put on a badge and a gun. Or they're in the courtrooms, the judges, the lawyers. They're in positions of power. And you fear that power. But maybe it's past time for you to fight the power. Fight the power that be. Remember that song? We need a civil rights movement part 2. Not because of a Democrat political party, but because of freedom. Black Americans are not free. Black Americans need to take their freedom if they don't give you freedom. Or better yet, no one should be able to give you what is rightfully yours. The 400 years is over. Black Americans have been in captivity for over 400 years. Now the curse is lifted. So if you're still now cursed and on the bottom, it's because that's where you want to be. If you don't want to be that, if you don't want to be on the bottom, if you don't want to be a part of a curse that's now lifted, then you need to stand up and fight the power that be. We need a civil rights movement part 2. So just had to get that off my chest. I'm tired of seeing these videos where black dudes are strong and the white dude is weak, and because he's got a badge and he's got a gun, he's now got a taser where he tases you and you're running, he tased you in the back. I watched this one cop, he tased this female right in her chest and she fell backwards, hit her head on some poles that would stand up, and he was still tasing her. She was screaming and yelling. And now he's over her. He's exerting his power now over her, abusing his power. Why? Because she refused to submit. I see dudes being pulled over. And because they refuse to let their window down all the way, the cop grabs the window and breaks it. And then snatches the guy out of the car and then threatens to shoot him. I watched this one video this past week where the cop pulled this dude over and told him that he was going to put one right in his chest because the dude was parked in a parking lot on the phone. This is what black Americans are just sitting back allowing to happen. When you see injustice like that, you fight injustice. Now, I respect law enforcement. I want to make that perfectly clear. But when law enforcement goes outside of his element and becomes a criminal, then you treat him like the criminal that he is. You treat him as if someone is breaking inside your house. Treat him as if he's breaking in to harm you and your family. You don't give respect to him, because then he becomes the predator and you're the prey. You have to stand up and defend yourself. Stop laying down, taking what they dish out to you. Until next time, I'm fearless.